Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa, kia ora te whānau o MUV Talks. Ko Glenshie te maunga, ko Esk te awa, ko Ngati Kotarania tuku iwi, no Kotarania ahau, ke Tamaki Makaurau, taku kāinga, no Hannah ahau. So what you just heard there is a story. It's my pepeha, part of my whakapapa, how I relate to this world. That's my story. And story, okay, it's one of those perhaps irritatingly overused buzzwords, right? Businesses have brand stories, marketers need to tell a story, but hey, there's a reason for this. A story is a unit of humanity. I'm here to talk to you about how knowing your own story is essential for developing yourself as a young leader of tomorrow, that knowing your story has both intrinsic and instrumental value. So yes, my name is Hannah Lees. I'm a researcher, a recruitment advisor, a civics educator, but most importantly, I just consider myself an educator overall. So I did work in English teaching in South Auckland schools through the Teach First NZ program, and I bring more people into that network now towards that aim, towards equality in education. So we work to make the school experience more diverse, so that a diverse range of students can see themselves reflected in the materials they encounter in their learning. But it's not only through encountering other people's stories, it's by coming to terms with their own story that they gain potency as those leaders of tomorrow. So I came into teaching with this dream to help empower students in schools serving lower decile communities. I wanted to disrupt that old adage that those who can't teach. However, I did come into this job with a certain weakness for showing weakness. I'd always been told I was good at things in the education system. It was really hard for me to be vulnerable and to not be great at this job from day one. So when you walk into a secondary school classroom for the first time, your credentials, your achievements, any accolades, that doesn't matter at all. The classroom is the great leveler. So all that matters is the trust, the warmth, the credibility, and the stories. And that all takes time. There is no shortcut. So teaching puts me to the test like nothing else. There's no hiding behind a facade. Students can sniff out inauthenticity immediately. So it's my story and sharing my weaknesses that make me credible to students, and it's facilitating their stories that helps them feel secure and makes them feel recognized. So that has that intrinsic value. We all want to be recognized, but it also has instrumental value. When we feel secure and recognized, we're more free to contribute to the world. So my aim with education is for students to create a sense of home in their creative or vocational or community pursuits. That sense of home comes from their stories. Writing your story can be incredibly comforting, but it can also be confronting. Cesar Cruz says that art should not only comfort the disturbed, but it should disturb the comfortable. So you start to realize that you need to confront assumptions in your default modes of storytelling. So we all know that doctors take on the Hippocratic Oath, which is first to do no harm. Now, I always thought this oath was a little lacking in aspiration. Do no harm? What about doing good? Well, now I see it's actually really essential as a starting point for all of us trying to do change-making work. Without a story, we're really tetherless. We can lash out or even cause accidental harm if we don't have a story to refer to. So we must always check our story to see whether we're causing harm, even if it comes from a place of good intentions. So my initial good intention as an educator was to help students to achieve excellence. I thought this was universal, but then I started to realize that I was foisting my story of the meaning of excellence onto them. I realized that the students needed to get the opportunity to set the agenda through telling their own stories. So Daniel Dennett proposes that the self is simply a center of narrative gravity. So in other words, we are our stories. So I urge you to think outside the bounds of the story that you usually tell about yourself. After all, why write it if you already know the whole story? See what's there about yourself that you don't know yet. An invisible, unbearable passion could reveal itself. And platform is no excuse. You don't need to be on a stage. You don't need to have a publishing deal. Everybody has a platform. So one project with my English classes is to embark on a series of micro-memoirs via the humble Instagram caption. So it's a very, very small act, but also a very potent act of radical sincerity. In the age of the ironic meme, students putting their stories out there for a public audience online was a true leap of faith for a lot of them. So some of my students had never, ever identified themselves as writers, let alone as change makers. But the project of writing these micro-memoirs sparked forays into blogging, self-publishing, and even budding careers now in documentary making. So it helps students to know that they can bring comfort or joy to others by sharing their own story. See, that's the delicious paradox of all of this story business. The more comfortable we are as individuals, the more able we are to let go of individualism. So when I connect to my story as an educator, that's when I can let go of my ego, all of my ambition, my individualism, and I can just get to work, do the mahi, serve a vision that is bigger than myself. So as an educator, I have to sit with this discomfort of not knowing whether I'm truly making a change. I'm sure we've all had those moments where we're putting in the hard yards and we don't always know how to measure it. So we could be measuring outcomes with assessments and surveys and data analysis till we're blue in the face, but we might never know if we've made an imprint on someone's heart. It might be years in the future when one of my students sits back and realizes that telling their story was a turning point for them. Or that moment might never happen, and I have to be okay with not knowing. I have to let go of my ego and desire for achievement in the face of this bigger story of gradual, incremental, and let's face it, collective change. So storytelling is one of the highest forms of hope. It says, I exist, I come from somewhere, I am of my landscape and my ancestors, I matter, and I can contribute. So to all those leaders of today, and importantly tomorrow, I leave you with this thought. Making a difference means walking that fine line between knowing yourself, knowing your story, but also learning to give up yourself, giving up your ego to serve a community and a greater cause. So ask yourself, what is my individual story? And also, what greater story can I give up my individualism for? Kia ora.